Hello, everyone. Once again, Itamar from Jerusalem, and we are today continuing our ongoing discussion about virtual tourism. And today we have our first lady on the podcast, Grace from Buenos Aires. Welcome, Grace.
Hi.
Hey, so like we usually do, I would love if you can tell us about yourself. Who are you, Grace?
Okay, Grace. So I'm Grace from Buenos Aires, and actually, I was born in Buenos Aires, but when I was 5, my father decided to go to the States, and his original plan was 2 years. It ended up being 11 years, so I ended up, the whole family there ended up studying almost all of my school years in the United States. Then we came back to Argentina, and I finished high school here, was with my family, and I didn't really understand what was going on with the world, because way back then, I'm not going to tell you when, but it was not.
It was the 1990s. Tell us, it's okay.
It was a long time ago, but I'm not going to tell you exactly, but there was no social media and there was no globalization, and Argentina was like another planet, more or less. So even though I was born here, I didn't really have, I didn't have any connection. And when I came back, it was like going into another world. I remember my brother and I would look at the things in the streets. We felt like we were in the time tunnel, like we had come, back in time.
Yeah.
And it was okay, but the thing is that culturally it was very quite a cultural shock, because like today, if my daughter would go to another country, actually she did, and she came back and everything, everybody's like the same with social media. There's a lot of connection, but way back then it was like, you make a long distance call and you're yelling, "Hey, can you hear me? Yeah." It was like, we used to send like cassettes with, cassettes.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that was kind of a cultural shock. And the good thing was I really learned, this English is because of that. But I do speak fluent English and Spanish. When I finished high school, I didn't know what to do, so I went to Israel.
Okay.
And since I'm Jewish, I had the possibility of going to Israel. I went to kibbutz, blah, blah, blah. I came back, then I went back to Israel, ended up staying there 4 years, studying and living and working and studying in Israel. I have family there, and it was lots of fun, but I still didn't know what to do with my life. I came back to Argentina, and then I just stayed here since then. Mm-hmm. So that's like the general part. I studied graphic design. I did lots of different things. I studied English. I taught English. I was a dancer. I danced Israeli dances. I taught Israeli dances. I was also, I did lots of different things. And I also always loved art. So I studied graphic design. I ended up being a graphic designer. And after that, I did many different things. I worked in production of music, of events, different things. Because I knew English, it was easy for me to work with international events. And then I worked at a company. Every 7 or 8 years, I change and I do something different. And all of a sudden, I decided to study tourism because it sounded attractive to me. I wanted to change, and I knew languages, and I loved being with people. I loved teaching, and for me, a tour guide is a teacher, is somebody who transmits, who teaches people about their place or about different things. So I studied tourism. And when I studied tourism, since I loved art, I decided to do a special city tour as a practice related to street art. And I got into the street art scene. I started studying street art and seeing what that's all about. And I realized that that's what I wanted to do, focus on that in tourism.
Cool. So at this point, you're mainly in Buenos Aires, right?
So I am in Buenos Aires. I live in Buenos Aires. I stayed in Buenos Aires, even though I have traveled, but this is my where I live permanently. And I have done city tours in Buenos Aires, but I realized that what I most like is to do street art tours. So I really investigated a lot, and I got to know the artist, the world, what it's all about. And that's what I do. Well, actually, what happened was when I came back from a trip to Europe in 2019, I started doing street art tours here, but just for local people in Spanish to see how it worked. And the people really loved it because they discovered parts of the city. You know, when you live in your city, you're not a tourist, but the tourists come and see things that you don't realize. So I showed the street art to people who live here and they really liked it. So then I said, okay, so now I'm going to start doing it for tourists. And this was March 2019.
Oh, wow. So you only had 1 year.
COVID came. So I couldn't do it with the tourists. I had printed out all of these flyers to take to the hotels. And I was already in connection with people to, you know, with tourist agencies and everything. I was ready to receive the tourists and COVID came.
So wait before we move to COVID years, if we talk about Buenos Aires in terms of tourism, I know it from Tel Aviv, and over here in the background, you can see an Israeli street artist from Canada originally, Uriel Cohen, and her art, you know, you can see Herzl and you can see the soldiers kissing over there. So in Tel Aviv, like for many years, Florentine neighborhood where Uriel Cohen is actually working, was kind of a slums, my sister called it the glorious slums of Tel Aviv. And it was off the beaten track for many years, and until I would say somewhere between the last 5, maybe even 10 years, that it really became like it flourished. So was like in Buenos Aires in the last, let's say 5 or 10 years, was that a thing, like to do street art, to have tourists in these streets to see the local art? Was that a thing in the last few, or
yes, actually,
are you part of the people, like the pioneers of that field?
It has been a thing actually. Here in Buenos Aires, the main street art scene began in the beginning of for quite a while, 2000 more or less.
So 20 years maybe.
Street art, lots of like what you have there, lots of stencils, but it's mainly politically influenced because of all of our political situations and financial situations and crises and things like that. The people were used to putting things up on the walls related to politics, mainly protests and things like that. But it was very common for the walls to be covered with different things. Also, with our military dictatorship from 1996 to 1976 to 1976, 1983, that military, after that, there was, we had a lot of disappeared people and lots of images related to that, like stencils or silhouettes of, it's like an empty silhouette, which would represent the disappeared people were put up on the walls, and the mothers of the Plaza de Mayo, which were mothers who were looking for their children, who have the scarf, that's a stencil that's also put. So in that sense, there was lots of street art related to politics. Things. But afterwards, Argentina is a very creative country. I say that you have to be creative to live here to survive all of the crisis that we have. And the creativity is also shown in the streets and in the art. And many kids who like started to paint street art would like travel to Europe, come back when it was cheap, when we had one of our times when it was easy to travel outside of the Argentina, and they would come back with ideas. And there is a lot, like the main street guys who paint street art, many of them began, I would say 15, 20 years ago. But it has grown a lot in the past like 10 years. And,
so more or less the same timeline, I think, like Tel Aviv, I think so. Yeah, interesting.
Here it grows more and more. But like the last 10 years was like more of an explosion, but actually there are people who have been doing this for more than 20 years, actually. So it would be similar.
I can really relate to what you said about how creative people have to be in order to live in Argentina. Same goes in Israel. There is a joke that being an Israeli is not a nationality, it's actually a profession. So maybe you experienced a little bit of that too in your Israeli years.
You survive here. If you want to, besides that, you know, when we went away, everybody was saying, don't come back.
Yes.
My father would say, oh, we're coming back next year. No, don't come back yet. Don't. It's always worse. And it has been worse for the past like 40 years.
Wow.
So people who want to be here, they have to be creative, and it's because they really want to be here because of the family, because they love the country, they love the city, and they don't want to live in exile. But many people had to go for political reasons, but other people leave because it's difficult to stay here financially. But if you want to stay, you can stay, and there's a lot of things to do and a lot of creativity going on. But you do have to.
So like with that, this is a great segue actually to the crisis of COVID. I mean, this like in addition to like the general difficulties that you're describing, now COVID hits and tourism is completely closed. And so you're creative. So what did you do since March 2020?
Well, I'll tell you what I did. It was very interesting because COVID for me, besides the fact that it was terrible and everything that happens, you know, with the health and all that, it was like an explosion for me for creativity and to begin doing new things. The first thing I did was, this was March, like maybe in May, I got a phone call from a friend who's also a tour guide, and she said, look, from the National Tour Guide Association, they're organizing these Zoom meetings where each one who has something special to show prepares a Zoom for the rest of the tour guides. So that was my first like virtual. It wasn't a virtual tour actually, but in a way it could be a virtual tour because
a presentation, I think, right?
A presentation, but it was almost like a tour because I presented. Since I am a graphic designer and I have. I know how to use like technology and PowerPoints or different things with videos and things like that. So I created a Zoom for other tour guides to see, to talk about the history of street art around the world. So I began telling, you know, how it began in the trains in New York in the 60s and 70s. And then I moved on to give examples of street artists here in Argentina and street artists around the world and the techniques they use and everything. It was about an hour, a little more than an hour. And it took me a long time to prepare it because I had to, you know, look for information and put in. I wanted it to be dynamic. So I didn't want it to be just, you know, bullet points or text. I wanted to be a lot of images.
Visual.
So I created this Zoom and it was really great. And afterwards I realized, well, this was great for the tour guides. I could use this for other things. So I presented that for schools here in Argentina in English and in Spanish for their art department and for their English department. And I taught the children. And then I did it for some old age, like for seniors residents in the United States. And a friend of mine in Canada asked me, hey, I'm teaching in Canada, could you do it for, okay. So that's how I began with virtual something. It wasn't a tour. Now, in parallel to that, one day I'm on Facebook and I'm in several pages Facebook groups that have to do with tourism. And I see that somebody is announcing a virtual tour in St. Petersburg. And you know who that was?
Anna.
That was Anna Levina.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, what is this? I'm going to sign up for this. I'm going to check it out. I didn't even know it was, at that time, Hago was virtual trips. So I signed up for the tour and I turned it on and I see this girl walking at 11 p.m. at night in St. Petersburg. It was raining. She was showing us, and I felt like I was walking with her down the streets of St. Petersburg. It's amazing. I was like astonished. I said, what is this? And there were people like coming on and on the chat, you know, I said 100 people, 200, I don't know how many people were there. Anyways, when I finished that, I said, hey, what is this platform? Maybe I could do something on it. So I looked it up. I checked, you want to be a guide on virtual trips? Okay, I signed up. I got an interview, blah, blah, blah. And that's how I began in when was this? 2020?
Yeah, like winter of 2020 somewhere.
April, it was actually April 2020. It was right before Virtual Trip turned into Halo.
No, April 2021 you're talking about.
2021 then?
Yeah,
okay.
Sure.
So it was April 2021.
Yeah.
Right, because now it was a year. Perfect.
A year ago. Yeah.
Okay, so it was April 2021, and I signed up, and I learned. I didn't even know what a gimbal was. I said, I don't know what this is, but it looks like fun, and I started, preparing my tours, and that's how I began with virtual tourism, and it opened me up to a whole new world. And I started telling everybody about it. It was like, hey, you got to see this. The thing is that here in Argentina, I mean, Hego is only in English. So many of my friends from Argentina couldn't watch it. But, my brother lives in Miami, and I have lots of friends who speak English. So everybody who could, I told them, you should watch this. And that opened up a world, not only meeting you and meeting all the other guides and seeing and connecting and doing this. I don't know, I couldn't stop talking about it. This thing that's virtual tourism. So I don't know, I thought
so
it was great.
Walk us through the like your stages of development in you started with the presentation, then you discovered gimbal and streaming live from the streets of Buenos Aires in your case. Tell us, how do you develop the content? Like, what was your passion about? Was it straight ahead you went to the street art, or you did some classic tourism and then you moved to the street art?
No, I decided, and this was a thing because there's Fabian is he's the guide in Buenos Aires.
Yes.
He was here from Hego from the beginning, I think.
Yeah.
And so he welcomed me. So we arranged at that time. So I said, look, I'm just going to do street art. You stick with the historical and with the other things, and so we won't, step on each other. And what I did was I started preparing. I mean, those are tours that I have done. But it's different. You have to adapt, to the virtual world that you're walking around alone and talking down the street. You're like you're talking alone down the street. But and it's interesting because the people see you with the gimbal and they think like you're from a TV channel or something.
What is that?
They think they're going to be famous. So I say, hi. It's funny, but I don't know, I guess it looks important. So I had to, I had to learn about, okay, what to do before the tour and make sure that this is off, that this is on, and make sure of the battery. There's lots of technical issues, but those technical issues, they sort of turn into automatic things afterwards. And what I did was just try to see, since I'm showing street, try to see what the best way it would be to show this to the people and ask questions in the middle. Like when there's some paste ups or things of people that are well known, I ask them questions. Who knows who this is, and who knows what about this? Or like the other day, I did a brand new one the other day, Australian street art surrounding the embassy, and ask the people what they feel, what does this express, because it all has to do with art. Now, so I prepared different tours. It's strange because I feel there's something strange about it for me, when it's like, sometimes, you have to like ask something to see if the people are still there, because, it's like you are alone. You're not alone, but you may feel alone at sometimes. And each time is different. Even though it's the same tour, I realize that each time it's different. It's a different feeling or sensation.
Yeah, I know the feeling. We as guides, we are very sensitive to, the crowd. So I totally hear you. Tell me, you mentioned that the street art in Buenos Aires is very, maybe in Argentina in general, is like tends to be very political. But in terms of the themes of your tours, like maybe you can tell us about that. Like, how do you decide like the title of the tour?
Well, actually, the street art began as political, and I think that's why today Buenos Aires is a great place for street art, because it began as political. There are practically no restrictions as to who can put what on the walls.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if I have a house and I want somebody to paint the front of my house, I don't have to ask anybody for permission, like for the city government.
Yeah, no regulation on the facade of the.
No regulation on what the private property is. And so in that sense, many people from other countries came to paint here as well, because there's lots of permissions, and the city government also does like mini festivals where people come and paint. So actually today it's not as political as it was when it began.
Yeah.
Today there is much more artistic street art, or street art to raise awareness on different topics, like on the missing people, or feminism. There's a lot today. Like there's this artist who she told me that she was invited to paint at a festival in 2011, and out of 100 artists there were only 4 women. The rest were men. And she was like, that was like the situation of women in the world in many areas, right?
Yeah.
Now, as the years went by, there are many, many, many more women who are painting, who are pasting up on the walls and doing things, many of them with the message against violence, women, violence against women.
Domestic violence, yeah.
Feminism. So I have different tours where one of the tours, it was the murals were part of a festival, so they were like organized who would paint what and maybe the themes. But another tour is totally free, and the street art changes. Some of the murals are there for more than 10 years, and some of them are new and they get renewed, and there's different themes and there's different artists. It's quite varied as to what is painted on the walls. And now lately there are a lot more paste ups with phrases or social content, things that people want other people to pay attention to, with messages. So there's lots of younger people who are getting into the street art.
So the idea that like what I do want to more like focus now is virtual tourism and grace. Like now that you have that entire world of yours, like the content that you love, like the street art that you just described, and how do you see that now? Like that COVID is like fading out, and maybe you get more tourists now. Like, what is going to be the role? Like now you have the opportunity and the ability to convey your passion through the virtual medium to the rest of the world. Like, how do you balance that? Because it's like kind of a tension, I guess, between making money on in-person tours and the virtual world, which is so sometimes more, sometimes less. Like, how do you see that, the future of virtual tourism, the place of virtual tourism in your life?
Well, I found that I don't think it will go away. I mean, because I love to do live tours with real people.
Yeah,
I love to do that. But there's something, I'll tell you what happened to me, like on Hego, since their street art is not that popular as maybe, I don't know, a volcano someplace. Or I don't know, all the things you have to show and everything. I know that it has a limited, audience. So I said, well, I should go, people tell me, well, you should vary, you should do different things. Why don't you cook, or why don't you show, I don't know, the sunset or this or that? And I said, well, I want to do something that I like to do.
Yeah.
So what I realized is that I began this series called Meet the Artist, where I visit art studios of different artists here in Argentina. And it's like a win-win situation, because for me and for Hego, it's showing people from around the world what somebody here in Argentina is doing, how they work. They could ask them questions, what they're doing, what techniques they use. And it's very short, maybe half an hour. And I show different artists with their different pieces of work. For the artist, it's great because it's showcase. It's a window to the world.
Yeah, their exposure.
How could that artist reach Australia or San Francisco or Israel or this is a way that they can reach other people. So that's what I'm finding, that's one thing that virtual tourism can do, is close the gap between close the distances, make the distances shorter. So what I think is that for me, I can find different ways of connecting people around the world through the virtual tourism. That's something that I could never do in person, because
this is actually the point. I mean, aren't you able to get a group to that artist for a meeting? Like maybe even if they pay, like I guess if they pay for it, maybe. But like, what do you see? Like about what do you think about that? Can't you like do the in-person tours while meeting the artist? Is that something that you normally wouldn't do?
Well, the thing is the flexibility that you have with, eventually, I think the virtual tour is the door opening.
For you to these artists, for example.
For me to the artists, and for the people to the artists, and for the artists to the world.
Yeah.
So eventually, I could do a tour with real tourists and do it virtual as well at the same time. But I think that they're like different. I think it can be combined, but I also think that it's great when it's like a previous, it's like, okay, so you met this artist virtually, and now if you want to come here, when people, if the day you come to visit here, you can meet him in person, but you already know him, or maybe
do a workshop with the artist.
Do a workshop, or maybe you want to buy his work or whatever.
Interesting.
I think it's a way of connecting. I think virtual tourism is something positive that helps many people grow. It helps us to get to know places that otherwise we wouldn't get to know 100%. Them. And it helps us to see something that, I don't know when I'm going to go to St. Petersburg, but I already have seen it,
Yeah.
And in this world that I'm talking about the art and the artists, it's a way that the artists can reach the world also through the virtual tourism. And the way that the tourists, like many of the tourists have asked me, hey, why don't you do a tour where we see him working and we could see how so I told the artist the other day, I said, hey, would you like to do a tour while you're painting, you prepare some things and the people ask you questions and things like that. So I think it's infinite, the amount of things that can be done.
And I also think that in the terms of capacity, like I just think about, people that I interviewed on virtual tours over the years, of these last 2 years, and things that I do. Some of it is online, some of it is not. But now that I have a recording of these people that were interviewed, they gave me the permission to show this interview in presentations, or if I give virtual tours from home, then it's infinite. They don't spend any more time. Like I already interviewed them 10, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and that's it. Like I can just show it. It just could be online if I want to. I can I can edit it. I can show little parts of it, in a new way. So it's really a great way to get people virtual travelers to meet the people I'm interested in, the people that influence me, or showcases, like you said. Yeah,
and it's also a way to show to show something that otherwise you wouldn't be able to show it. And like you said, I mean, you can, like now after these tours I've done, I have the recordings and I can show somebody else, you know, if they want to do it, this is what it's like. You know, you have material. It's a great way of getting material together also on different places or different activities or different, you know.
Now, from your experience, like the artists that you've met, they tend to be more extrovert or introvert. I kind of imagine, like from what you described, it seems like they're more introvert, and without the camera and you being next to them with the camera, they wouldn't do any of it, right? Is that, did I get it right? This is the impression I get. Yeah, it depends.
It
Okay.
depends. Yeah, because the first artist I visited when I did this Meet the Artist, she's a woman who's an artist, but she also likes to sing and
okay.
dance, and you know, and she's great in front of the camera. But when I spoke to her, she said, look, I could introduce you to a lot of artists, but you have to know some artists don't like to appear in the, you know, camera.
Introvert. Yeah.
They're introverts and they don't like it. And some artists do. Some artists don't know how to talk. You know, they don't know how to talk.
They do the thing. Yeah.
They're into their artwork, and if you ask them a question, maybe, you know. So you have to see, you know, how to work with each one of them and what's the best way, because maybe the one who doesn't want to talk would like me to show the people how he paints and how he's doing his artwork, and maybe doesn't want to talk, you know. I could just
so you have to do the adjustments for each artist, clearly. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, but that's life, you know.
Yeah, so it sounds cool. Like you do believe that there is a future for virtual tourism. It doesn't go away. It won't go away.
No, I think it's here to stay. I think it is a great tool for everybody. I mean, it's a tool for the guides. It's a tool for the agencies. I don't think they know about it yet.
Yeah, they don't.
I don't think they realize. So if you are watching and you have an agency, you have to know that this is good for you. No, because really, they could show little parts of virtual tours and sell,
of their destination. Yeah, just to sell their destination.
Right. So I think it's a great tool for them. I think it's great for the tourists because they could see like a little glimpse of something before actually going. Or, you know, they say, hey, I like this, I'm going to go next year. Or if they can't go, at least they could see it from home. I think it's here to stay, of course.
Yeah. So I like, since the very beginning of the pandemic, I told every travel agent that wanted to hear about it that virtual tourism is rising. You know, this is a great tool for marketing and, you know, to sell their destination and to kind of expose what they do to the rest of the world and create, you know, more awareness to their destinations. And I got very few travel agents on board, very, very few, like maybe you can count them on one hand. But I kind of think now that as the world goes back to normal, and then, you know, this is my belief anyway, that a few months from now, after they will get their people in their office working, they will have their work rolling, then they will scratch their head and say, hey, like, what new tools do we have? So I kind of hope that within, I don't know, 4 months, 6 months, who knows, like maybe by the end of 2022, we'll have more travel agencies on board, and they will realize, oh, okay, I can use Grace to market my destination, whether it's a Argentinian travel agency or is it like some travel agency in Europe that wants to sell that destination, the Buenos Aires. So did you try to reach out to any of these companies and travel agencies?
I am not you, Itamar. I
am. you sleep at night.
I do sleep at night. No, and I don't even sleep at night always.
Okay.
No, I have a lot of, it takes me a long time to do each thing. Yeah. I am very meticulous about, you know, each time I prepare a new tour, I'm like studying, I'm doing a lot of research.
The whole research.
And every new project, my brother says I'm like the project woman. I have 1,000 projects, and I got this long list of things. So I haven't gotten to that yet.
Okay.
I have actually I have spoken to some, I was even wondering why there is no virtual tourism. There's very few in Spanish. I know that, okay, English is the main language around the world, but Spanish is close. I mean,
it's huge. Of course.
There's so many countries, not only countries that speak Spanish, United States, you have Spanish all over the place.
Of course.
And so I don't know why there aren't virtual tours in Spanish. And I have been talking to some friends that have agencies and say, look at this, you could do this and that. And it's like, I don't know. It's a project and it takes time. And I haven't had time to do that. But
from here, we can both agree to call us, the guides, to reach out to travel agencies and try to pitch them this idea of, use it as a marketing strategy for their business. Maybe that would work.
I think it would be interesting, maybe, sometimes when you tell somebody about something, they listen, but they're thinking about something else. Maybe it would be interesting to prepare some kind of a pilot, to prepare something. Look, you could, some kind of material. I don't know. I'm thinking about a better way of selling it to them with something, concrete, real. And say, because when you give them the idea, maybe they don't imagine it. Like many people, I say virtual tourism and they say, what's that?
Yeah, they didn't catch up. So for the basic thought that I pitched, I'm talking about 2020, I already pitched that. I told them, look, you have a newsletter. You have all these travelers that went through you and maybe they just had to cancel because of COVID and all that. Send them a newsletter, invite them to a free virtual tour. I mean, the guide will get either tips or, whatever fixed price you can give him. And that's it. It's a win-win. You're going to give them some added value of of whatever destination you want to show them. They will be happy. The guide will be happy. You will get traffic. Why not? I mean, this is such a basic thing. And people love it. Virtual tours for free, that's for sure. But I mean, I actually think that the guides, of course, should be paid somehow. That's at least from my point of view. But I do think it's a great added value that the travel agencies can give, their travelers that maybe are craving for new destinations and new adventures and want to be inspired.
I think eventually it will. I think it will happen, but maybe it'll take some time. But I do think it'll happen because I'm positive that I know that virtual tourism is going to stay and that it is good for everyone. I think it's good for everyone.
Very cool.
Okay.
So any other thing you want to tell us, Grace?
No, I'm off. I will be out of the virtual tourism for a little.
Oh yeah, I know.
I'm traveling myself, but I will be doing a tour from where I will be, some virtual tours. But right now I'm actually preparing my trip that I'm leaving on Monday, so I'm a little busy with that.
But this is just for a few weeks, right? You'll be back.
Yeah, it'll be a month that I'll be away, but I'll be back soon. And no, the only thing I want to say is thank you, because you are a motor. You're like an engine. You are never stopping. You're always there. I don't know where you get your energy from, but thank you for all of your initiatives.
I have the baby helping me out in the office, so he carries much of the burden now. So yeah.
Yeah, I had backpack.
He's taking all the paperwork now, so I got it off my head.
I see that.
Thank you very much, Grace, for your time and your thoughts.
Okay.
So guys, more interviews and podcast on our virtual tourism podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. More is about to be launched, and Grace, all of your social media will be on that video, on the description of the video. So be sure to contact Grace if you are getting to Argentina. And until next time, thanks again. Goodbye for now.